I've taken a step back from the politics and the news cycle, from every bent, from even the alternative media, is because I don't think any of it's relevant anymore. We have a problem in this country, and it's economic in base. That's why I keep hammering on this issue over and over again. There is a war on wages. There is a war on what is your labor worth, which really boils down to what is your time worth as a person working on this planet. And it's been decided by somewhere, somehow, some group of people, maybe the nebulous forces of unchecked, barely regulated capitalist market forces. Whatever excuse you want to make for it, it's happening. And it's not just here in America. I just watched a video from Bo Refik, Legion of Men, on the economic situation happening over in London right now. And it's basically a carbon copy imprint of what's happened here in the United States and Canada. And I've not peeled back the hood on this to look and see if the same indicators are present. I imagine they are. Tell me if any of this sounds familiar. Heavy reliance on foreign manufacturing and industry, a deluge of immigration. Immigration that's basically unchecked. The sluice gates have been opened. Give me your tired, your sick, your huddled masses. What could possibly go wrong? We're not going to vet any of these people. And if you raise any ire, any suspicion, any complaints over this, well, you're a racist. And in the UK, that carries a prison sentence. You can't even tweet about stuff online anymore. Does that sound like freedom to you? Does that sound like a first world country, or does that sound like a dictatorship? It's a trick question. What is the reason? Why did I start looking into this stuff? Why did the people whom inform my discretion about history go out of their way to look into these things? Because we need these lessons of history so we don't repeat them. And unfortunately, at least for here, I can't speak to what's going on over in Jolly Old, but I know in the United States, people don't even understand what happened in recent history. How many buildings fell on September 11th, 2001? How many were struck by planes? What happened on those planes? You'd think American citizens would be pretty up to speed on these topics, but they're not. I could do an entire podcast just on the things Americans should know, but don't. The economics situation is a good example of that. Why could I buy a house back in 1980 for $150,000 and now that same house, the exact same house, costs $500K, $500,000? You know, you used to be able to go to a used car lot and buy a car with maybe 80,000 miles on it for $500. That same car now will run you about $20,000. What happened? We don't understand history. We don't learn the important lessons of history. And there are folks getting up to speed on things right now because a lot of stuff does not make sense, does not add up. People should not have to work until they are shoved into their graves. I would hope that's a self-evident statement. And yet, the system that we live in right now, in most of the developed nations of the world, is exactly that. How many people out there are working 2, 3, 4 jobs plus a side hustle just to make ends meet? Not even get ahead, just to make ends meet. Why is it like this? Too often, those with a microphone would like to take occasion after occasion to blame you for your individual choices, your mistakes. We've all made mistakes. The boomers, the silent gen before them, they made mistakes too. But the economics were different. You could recover. When you can make, in 1 year, half the needed down payment for a house, your margin, your error margin ratio is much larger than if you're just making ends meet. Period. This is a very simple equation. Time in, reward out. Good example of this. Where did the 2.5x income ratio come from for the application to apartments? In most places, you got to make 2.5 times rent per month in order to live at that particular apartment complex. But where did that equation come from? Well, the reason why it exists is so that, or at least the thinking behind it, is so that you'll have 2.5 months worth of rent in the event that you lose your job or you get sick or you're injured. But that is not the reality right now. It's very easy to find yourself unemployed for longer stretches of time than 3 months. So people are lying on their applications. They have to, unless you want to live on the street or with 5 roommates. But the reason why that exists is so they know that you'll have extra disposable income on the back end, which is basically less than 50% of the population of the United States right now. And that extra income, look, just because you're making 2.5 times the rent does not mean that you have that in disposable income. If you're paying $1,300 a month for an apartment and you're only making like $3,000 a month, and you have some kind of ongoing medical treatment that you've got to pay for, guess what? You don't have disposable income. Everything has gone up astronomically except for wages. It's the one leading factor, the one central factor. And basically every argument, every social ill in this country today, you can boil everything back down to people are not making enough money. This didn't happen overnight. This was a glacial speed economic kill switch that has slowly been flipped, a lever, if you will. The temperature on the boiling pot, and we're the frog inside it, being cranked up little by little, lowering our quality of living, increasing our cost of living, stripping options away from us. Just get Bitcoin, bro. Just grind harder. There's more millionaires than ever in the United States. You could be the next one. Start a venture capital firm and venture forth with your BS whatever. Clarity is an important thing. The path to success needs to be clear, not murky. To have a successful country, to have a populace that gives a damn about the job that they're doing, at least enough to show up and give 50%. If you provide that clarity of a path to economic success and eventual freedom from the system of work, people will show up and give effort. But when you strip that away, when you make it murky to the point where, you have people following this system, go to college, get a certification, invest in the stock market, get a 401k, get your pension. Don't worry, Social Security will be on the other side, just in case. When you take that away, what do you have? What's the motivation to continue to show up and work? I've been making videos on YouTube for over 10 years now and experienced zero channel growth in the last 6, up until very recently. The only reason I keep doing this is because I've experienced growth in other areas and I've met interesting people doing this. And as I've said, this is my own personal form of therapy, a digital journal. One of the newer channels I've seen shoot up through the ranks, Raymond Thoughts and Minds, described YouTube as universal basic income if you can get paid on that platform. It's not an easy feat. I've watched numerous channels on YouTube get pounded into the dirt, lose their monetization, almost right at the height of really starting to quote unquote make it. I think money is the worst thing that happened to this platform. I really do. But it was inevitable. And it's sad. What Raymond said, it's sad. I think he probably realizes that too. Because things shouldn't be this way. We shouldn't have to side hustle. I shouldn't have to anticipate eventually being able to monetize this channel just so I don't have to struggle as much. But that's where I am. I never, ever wanted to monetize the work that I did on YouTube. I just did it for entertainment and information purposes. That's it. Well, that's changed because the blueprint is all wrong now. We're handed bad advice from our boomer parents, from our Gen X parents. You want to set a 20-something-year-old up for permanent failure, the permanent hard times for the rest of their life. You saddle them with a couple $100K in student loan debt that cannot be forgiven, cannot be bankrupted out of. And you tell them, well, you can get a good paying job. You just got to get the degree. Go to college, go to college, go to college. It's not working out. Just look around. It's not working out. I think the student loan debt forgiveness scheme that the Biden administration was pushing, probably the only solid platform that they ran on. And I'd argue the reason why he got elected in the first place. If you subtract the skullduggery, 1,000 mules and all. If I had to drink the Kool-Aid and believe that that was a legitimate thing, I would say it's probably because of the student loan debt forgiveness part of his campaign, which they never followed through on. But do you know why? It might surprise you to know that there would be economic benefits for having young people who are not saddled with grinding perpetual debt at the very beginning of the peak of their life. I can't think of anything that's killed my motivation more than knowing that it doesn't matter how hard I work. Nothing is going to substantially change, at least not in a time frame where it's really going to matter to me. Backpedal on China tariffs, I see as a canary in the coal mine event. Not America's relationship with China, not China's relationship with America, but this administration's relationship with its own constituents, with our citizens, with our businesses and our entrepreneurs. We just sent the wrong message. That message is, we will bend for China. I know it's just a 90-day reprieve, another one of those red light, green light events. This was not the time to introduce whiplash into the equation again, second time in a row. I can tell you there are American companies right now that they were hovering above the feed trough of cheap Chinese products, waiting for this to happen. And when it did, they swooped in and ordered by the shipload, literally. This was not the way. So every indicator that I'm seeing from this administration is that they are not serious about moving manufacturing back to the United States. And according to the boomers and the laughy people on the television, they'll tell you that Americans don't want to do those jobs. They're monotonous, they're tiring, they're smelly, they're dangerous. People will do monotonous, back-breaking, stinky, and dangerous jobs if the pay is right. If the pay is right. It isn't right now. Hasn't been for a while. But that's the issue that no one will talk about. No one of authority anyways. And watch how quickly the topic changes when somebody does bring it up. Watch the waffling, the nervousness, the tics, the tells, the whoops. We got to go to commercial break real quick. Brought to you by Pfizer. You watch. If anything's even said about it at all. Again, back to history. The Pinkertons, the original Secret Service, private security for the president, back almost 200 years ago. They had their tiffs union busting, literally busting unions, with truncheons and machine guns, water-cooled back then. What was that over? Wages, working conditions. Wasn't the first time, wasn't the last time. Nowadays, that stuff still goes on, but it's more legal. You get lawyers in there. You get espionage agents in there, plants from corporate. Now we call them HR. And Doge sure had a good run. Remember when they went at USAID? Man, they were pissing away a lot of our money on stuff that didn't matter, no one asked for. Some of it super shady, some of it good, or at least ostensibly good on paper, look good. Food, medicine, stuff like that for children in impoverished areas of the world. Great. But what happened with Doge? Where'd it go? What's Elon Musk doing now? I guess they're trying to fire it back up again, but then they lowered their numbers. Initially, they said they were going to try for $1 trillion in cuts, and then, wouldn't you know it, Donald Trump turned around and said, we're going to increase the military budget to $1 trillion. A clearer message could not have been sent to the American people. This administration is not serious about its stated objectives. We need to lower national debt. We need to induce manufacturing, job making here in the United States, not service economy crap. The service economy can only exist with the backbone of manufacturing to drive it forward. Joe the plumber, Bob the electrician, these guys need to get their parts from somewhere. So you got a third of the market that's happening overseas. All that money goes somewhere. It's not America. Jobs lost in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And what happens when that pipeline for the cheap Chinese junk gets cut? What happens if we do start dropping warheads on foreheads? Or they do it to us first? Very possible. There is a worst case scenario for how this could have played out with the embargo of Chinese products. which is essentially what 145% tariffs did. Should have kept it. Should have went with Kevin O'Leary's 400% tariffs and really ripped the Band-Aid off on this. But we backed down. Why? I don't know. Maybe there was a good reason for it. But we sure as hell didn't get an explanation not one that was adequate. Not for what is lost. I don't mean to be stuck on this, but we need our manufacturing back. And you can make the argument, well, it's all going automated anyways. Well, great. Then who's going to build the robots? Who's going to maintain them? You're still going to need a workforce for that. Should be making them here. Let the world come to us to buy their automation robots, their assembly line products. This isn't even, we shouldn't be talking about this. It should just be. It should already be. What it comes down to is the hard conversation with the simple answer. Why don't we build things in America? Because American labor costs too much. In other words, it would cost the shareholders too much. Well, I would posit to you that if that is the case, then that industry, that business does not deserve to exist. We fought a war over slavery in this country, and now we're buying slave labor products from overseas. But it's okay because we don't have to see the slavery, so it doesn't exist, right? And China plays games with its fiat money just like the United States does. That's an entirely different topic, again, one I've hammered on this channel. These are my number one and number two primary issues that we need to fix with America. One, we need stable and honest currency. Two, we need to build stuff here again. Anything we can build, we should be doing it. There's no excuse not to. American wages are too high. Tough shit. Pay or you don't get to go into business. Figure it out. This inability to pay workers an adequate wage, this is not a new thing. We didn't used to have as big of a problem with it as we do now. There were manufacturing jobs back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. We were making computers here. We made all of our plane parts, automobiles, all the parts that went in that, the electronics. Oil and gas is kind of its own little monster, but we could do that here also. And you know what you could do with that? You could export it to the world. Another thing we used to do. They made a big hubbub about how many millions of dollars worth of Apple products that Chinese citizens buy. Man, can you imagine if we made that argument about slaves in the South buying their own textile products that they harvested and wove? Can you imagine? I don't think I've ever heard that argument, but that is the argument. That's somehow healthy. We have an unhealthy relationship with labor. Unhealthy to the point where pitchforks are going to start coming out very soon. They already are. You look at what's happened since 2016. If this isn't rectified, history books in the future will say that the second Civil War in America started a decade ago from when I published this. I don't want to see it. We've not meaningfully addressed the issues that are driving this country down the wrong path. I've heard people, boomers say stop buying avocado toast, Gen X, cut your Netflix, live within your means. It's all code for you don't make enough money. That's what it is. It's a snarky blow off of, well, I got mine and you can do with less than what I'm doing with right now. We all made mistakes. Every generation made mistakes. But the big ones, the biggest ones, the fake money, the US dollar, and outsourcing high-paying low to mid-skilled jobs to overseas for slave labor wages. This is not one administration's screw up. It's multiples. It's not been fixed. It's not been addressed. They put Band-Aids on it, but most of them actually made the problem worse. And it's compounding. It's compounding to the point where only war is a viable alternative, or things get worse. And you're going to have a population implosion. This is going on everywhere in the world right now. Japan, Norway, Germany, France, the UK, Canada, and the United States, below replacement level. Some of them, the births are so low that they're going to run into problems in the next decade. We're starting to see the pains of that right now. Who's out there having kids when you can't even afford to support yourself? And if you are, then you and yours are either going to be living on the street or living on Uncle Sam's dole. That comes out of everybody's pocket. There's no such thing as free lunch. We'll just pay for it. Thanks, AOC. We will indeed just pay for it, as we always do, the working class. The engine of wealth creation now is in credit. It's in playing the stock market casino. It's in holding assets. Hodl, hodl, hodor, hodor hard. If you got land, you better hold on to it like your life depends on it, because it does. These corporations are just waiting for the economy to get bad enough to where the old holdovers of land, the generational money that aren't part of the design, get so financially wrecked that they have to sell off also. And then we can consolidate into 15-minute you-know-what. And whoops, we got another wildfire over here, over there. 100 million acres of suburbia just burned to the ground again. We got a fire NATO over there. Don't pay attention to that vortex satellite. Whoops. Pay no mind to the Raytheon laser drones. Pay no mind to the blue roofs in Lahaina. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along as we gentrify again. Not hoity-toity enough? Zap. Insurance companies pulling coverage, waffling, playing games. It's always been a scam. The difference is now the price for admission into the scam VIP room is getting higher and higher and higher. Somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 a year is the new middle class. By the time I get around to editing and publishing this video, it might be $200K. We can't keep making mistakes anymore. The margin for error is already 0.0003%. If I lived within my means, if I really followed that mantra, I might have, say, an extra $200, maybe $300 a month. But I wouldn't be long for this world if I did. I think most people fall into that bucket. You're not 20 years old forever. You're not 18 to 29 years old forever. You don't have the metabolism of a nuclear reactor your entire life. You get about 2 decades of it, and then you start to get toasted. What happens when the grind and hustle culture can't grind and hustle anymore? What's going to happen then? We're at record homeless numbers right now. What's going to happen then? What's going to happen in another 5 to 10 years when the hustle and grind culture can't do it no more? A lot of them can't do it no more right now, and they're still in their 20s and 30s. The shoplifting arrest bans that happened in California, Oregon, and New York were a naked admission by those areas that the cost of living was too high. It's not gotten any better. They're just enforcing the laws again. That's not me condoning people's illegal activities. You're always going to have a criminal class in any population, in any society, but when you make people desperate enough, you can turn somebody into a criminal. You can turn an upstanding person into a drug abuser, and into an alcoholic. You could take a person that would have been okay and make them severely depressed just by withholding one thing: money. Money is the first support system in any society. And when you strip that away, you strip away everything else that brings. Security. Security that's needed to build a base for one's own life, for one's own prosperity. We shouldn't have to put everything on credit cards. We shouldn't need credit cards at all. Even loans and mortgages. There was a time in this country where people could pay for things with cash, were expected to pay with cash. And that system worked for a long while, until it didn't. Until the banks just decided, this isn't working for us. We could bilk them for more. Working with your hands now is a liability. It doesn't pay enough. You risk life and limb doing it. We don't live in the same society that respects manual labor anymore, skilled or otherwise. You might benefit from it personally, being able to fix things around your house, on your vehicle. We have built this system up to be a punishment, a torture chamber for the blue collar. And then we wonder why people don't want to do these jobs anymore. Then we wonder why people don't want to work anymore. It was an entire video phenomenon on this platform, TikTok, and everywhere else on the internet. Our anti-work over on Reddit. I think that was this generation's Occupy Wall Street. Now, those folks might not be center stage anymore, but the argument certainly is. Games are being played with our money. Games are being played with our lives. I'm tired of being stressed out. I'm tired of wondering, what the hell am I supposed to do? It didn't always used to be like this. Not even within my own lifespan, which hasn't been that long in the grand scheme of things. I think millennials got it the worst because we saw the life that was mostly livable. You could achieve a modicum of success with a reasonable amount of effort, dedication. And we see the way things are now, which is why I've just turned it all off, because I don't see this administration fixing anything that really matters. I don't see things changing, not in a good way. It's a cliched thing to say that things have to get worse before they get better, but I'm pretty sure we're on the things getting worse trajectory. If it ain't broke, break it some more, so we can get another world war and another baby boom on the back end of it. Look forward to that. Either America unscrews the dollar and the wages situation, or you can look forward to war. There's no other alternatives. AI is not going to swoop down. We're not going to have a utopian 4-hour work week society. Just forget it. I'm sorry, Tom Bilyeu. I want to believe in your utopian dream set vision for the future of America and humanity. Now, please tell me at what point that you envision that the price tags on products are going to evaporate. Please tell me at what point people aren't going to charge rent for the properties that they own for you to live on them. Please tell me at what point that giant corporations are going to relinquish their land for $0. It's never going to happen. Utopia is only a few letters away from another word. Can you guess which version of that we're going to get? My money's on black.